Welcome everybody back to the Haunt Department with Life Intrigued. Now we're in our off season for our haunted trail, and that's when we do all of our building of our new props for the upcoming year. But before we do any of that, we have to go back and fix everything that may not have worked the way we intended or broke during the 2 nights of our trail. Spike is one of those animations that didn't work so hot for us last year. Worked great until we took it down to the trail and for some reason stopped working. So since we had to take it all apart to see what was wrong with it so we can fix it for the upcoming trail, we thought we'd videotape it kind of in reverse, show you how we put Spike together, just in case you want to know how we made one of our signature props for a haunted trail. If this is the first time here, please check out our introductory video. That gives a little more background on who we are, disclaimers and that, etc. So we don't have to bore you with that in each episode. So thanks for coming by, we appreciate it. So let's see how we put Spike here together. So I thought I'd start by just showing you the base of Spike here. Now for support, I'm just using a 1-inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe. But to hook it to the board, I need a little more strength there. I usually used end caps for that. But with all the weight that this was going to have, I switched to these Schedule 80 flanges. Work really nice because I can actually bolt them through the wood, give them a real nice sturdy connection here. And then from that, again, the Schedule 40 pipe, there'll be a little bit of flexibility, but that's actually okay with the animation I want. It makes it a little more shaky, which is fine in this case. Now I'm going to take you down to the base here. Let me change the camera here just for a second. Okay, now you can see the base here. When I originally made Spike here, I only had one board for the base, and hindsight, that was a bad decision because that wasn't very stable enough in the field. So since then I've added 2 little wing supports here, much more stable. I'll paint those black before it makes it out in the upcoming trail. Underneath the foam here is another flange, 1-inch flange, just basically again bolted to the wood base, and the PVC pipe sticks in that. So it's pretty solid, but again, some movement, which is okay. But it's not going to go anywhere. It's nice and strong. And as far as the pipe goes, again, this is supposed to be a spike that's coming down through the zombie that's holding it up in the air. So I wanted those guts to come down and look like it's flowing out of the body. So I basically took great stuff, sprayed it up and down here, this pole, as well as the base. And then from there, once it dried, spray painted it first all black, just to give that background base color. And then I came back with a cherry red, just to give it a more blood look with that. So I think that turned out pretty nice. Okay, so let's talk about the actual heart of this prop. Again, I'll have to change the camera angle for this. 1 second. So the heart of this animation is a wiper motor. That wiper motor drives a 2-bar linkage. That's connected to 2 pipes. In this case, it's 3/4-inch pipe that are fixed equidistant apart at both ends, and then they're connected in the center point for it to pivot back and forth on. Okay, now some interesting thing about this motor, you notice it has a very high neck here. Now typically that means with your standard 360 motors, I have to be above that for that linkage to get past it, which is, again, that's pretty high. But the nice thing about these motors is they only turn 65 degrees. So I never have to worry about it going across that pivot, which is really nice, which is why I really like these motors for our props. I believe these came out of a Honda Civic. It's very nice and handy. Again, it does have that high neck, but again, it doesn't come into play because it's never going to go past that, so the linkage is never going to hit it. Okay. So as far as the linkages go, I just took 3/4-inch aluminum stock, about 4.5-inch, roughly 4 1/4 inches. I bent that down just to bring it down a little bit in line with the arms. And again, I have another 7 3/4-inch bar here that connects to the back PVC bar. And then that again will push in and out as the motor is driven. So I can actually show you that movement. We have a controller here that we use for all of our props. I'm not going to talk much about this controller. I'll have a whole video on what we use to actually manage all of our props in the future. But for right now, I'm just going to turn it on. And it's driven by a PIR. There you can see that motion. Again, it's not crossing that midpoint. Again, about 65-degree rotation. And it's really nice going back and forth here. Okay, let's trigger it again. There we go. And you can see that outward motion that's caused as a result of these two ends being fixed. Okay. Turn that off for now. So as I mentioned in the intro to this, Spike here stopped working on the trail last year, so we had to figure out what's going on. We weren't able to diagnose what the issue was out on the trail, so we've taken it all apart, thinking that the issue here was in the actual motor wires that were connecting it. Turns out that that really wasn't the issue. We have connectors. We use these J connectors to connect to our controllers. It turns out that one of the wires had actually slipped out of that. So unfortunately, we were not able to detect that out on the trail last year. But it was a pretty easy fix just to put another connector on that, which got it up and running here pretty quick. However, since it's apart, one thing I wanted to do is fix a little plastic connector I had underneath here. So I'm going to do that here while we're at it, and I'll try to fast forward it so you don't have to sit through all the details. But the first thing I need to do is disconnect one of the linkages. So disconnect a linkage here. This will actually shows that movement without the motor here. So again, the key part is to have these fixed at the center points of these two pipes. So I'm going to take that off here right now and show you how we did that. Get the back one taken off here. Okay, there. So this thing should just now lift off. Right there. Actually noticed when I was taking this apart that this thing had cracked. I didn't know it was that bad, so I actually needed to replace that. I went ahead and printed out another support for that, and I'll take you through the dimensions of that while I'm taking this apart. As I mentioned in our introductory video, we use a lot of 3D printed parts in our animated projects. Now we promise to give you those print files or minimally give you the dimensions. In this case, the part we used for Spike here was so minimal, I thought I'd just provide you the dimensions because it's pretty easy to create. So the part is basically just a 40mm circle that's 6mm thick. In that there's 3 holes. Now this is the side that actually goes against the wood. And this recessed hole right here is that where the aluminum post sits through that the PVC pipe rotates on. The recessed dimensions is 11mm wide and 1.6mm deep. That's so the post can sit in the recess there. The center hole, the through hole, is 5.5mm, and that matches the diameter of that post. So it fits in there just perfectly and keeps it centered as the PVC pipe is rotating on it. On the other side, the side that faces up, and what we use to fasten this disc to the wood, has 2 holes in it for the screws. A recessed hole for the screw head is 11 millimeters wide and 3 millimeters deep. And the through hole for that screw is 5 millimeters. That's pretty much the width of the screw that we're using to fasten it to the wood. There are 2 of those, as you can see, just so it doesn't rotate or move. Gives it a nice little fixed position there. And just the other dimension, which probably isn't as important, and that's the distance of these 2 screw holes. It's somewhat flexible what this distance is, but just to be specific for the one we built, it was 26 millimeters on center between the 2 holes. You just want to make sure that those holes are far enough in from the edge and away from the center point here so they have a nice sturdy connection. See, coming up here, that wasn't the case with the first ones we made. It kind of cracked on us in here, and that's why we're having to replace it. Now, just to give you those outer dimensions one more time. Now I built this in multiple stages. I wouldn't do it again this way if I was going to start from scratch. I just take this. You'll notice that the length of that is 40 millimeters. That's basically the outer diameter for that disc, and it's 6 millimeters height, which is this distance here. So just wanted to show you that. I'll get you back to the video. Okay, yep, that was in pretty bad shape. Get rid of that. Okay, just to show you how this works here. Again, this binding post goes through the bottom here, goes into that recessed area so there's no obstruction with the wood. And then the PVC pipe, which has a hole drilled right through it, sits on top. And then it has these screw tops that just screw down on top of it, which is pretty nice. I used to use just screws in there, but the threads in those screws would always widen out my holes after a time. So I decided to go with these, much smoother, get a much better movement. So let me put that back on here. Screws should sit down in those recesses. Notice that the original post had a little bit of bend in it. Not sure why it has that. So I went ahead and replaced that as well. Unfortunately, the one that I was using was 1 1/4 inches. That was perfect distance with the spacer to come to the top of the PVC pipe. So it actually sat there and held it down, but still allowed it to move. This one I'm putting in there is 1 1/2 inches, so it's a little bit big. Again, I'll swap that out for the 1 1/4, but for right now, I'm going to go ahead and put that one in and put it all back together so you can see how it works. So I'm just going to slide this back on. There. Screw in these top posts. And put the new one on. Now again, that would come flush if it was that 1/4 inch smaller, so, okay. So again, get that nice movement, nice and smooth. And now with the larger support, I have a little more bracing for that pipe as it moves back and forth. So that looks pretty good. Next part is to talk about the body we built for this. So I'm going to grab that. Okay, so the concept was that this particular zombie had been spiked in the middle of its chest. So I wanted to build up that back and rib section for the zombie. So what I did is I used, looks like 1/8 inch galvanized wire, and I created a loop from one side to the other to give me spacing over the mechanism here so it wouldn't get caught up in there. So basically I drilled 3 holes on each side of the wood here, put in this galvanized wire brought it all the way around. So it gave me nice 3 supports here. And then I took, I believe it was sculpting wire, just to give me wire to give me more surface area around the sides of it. That would allow me to put the spray foam in and still keep everything out of the mechanism. So you can kind of see that here. You can see those larger wires here, which is those 3 around it. And then you can see these other wire pieces here. Hopefully you can see that. That go between those wires, really just to give me a surface to put the foam on. Okay. So I knew that this arm was going back and forth. I didn't want anything to hit it. So I actually brought in the wire here a little bit just to accommodate that movement of the wiper motor. So I'm going to put that in here. And you can't see it, but I'm going to reattach that linkage together. Going to tighten that just tight enough so it doesn't come apart, but still gives me good movement. Looks good. So open this up a little bit so you can see. Again, it's just around this wire. That's just giving it space here to move so it doesn't clip the wiring as it's moving back and forth. And then these 3 wires right here, these 3 ends, are going to go in these holes in the piece of wood. Put the back in first. And come around this side and put these 3 wires in on this side. Should be on both sides. Push that in a little bit. Again, it's very important that you can get to that wiper motor if you need to in case something goes wrong. In this case, it was the connector, but if it had been the wiring with the wiper motor, I would have had to take this all off and get to it. So it's a good thing that you're able to take this off, be able to get to that mechanism if needed. Use the same technique with the Great Stuff. Put foam over the wire frame here. Also came and put some entrails coming out. Now a couple of these broke, so I've used foam again to put these back on. I'll spray paint that once we're ready to go out to the trail. But anyhow, again, base coat of black just to cover the deep areas. Come back in with the cherry red to give it that blood look. It's looking pretty good. So the other thing I did, I'll take this screw out here, is I wanted to make sure the shirt that I was going to put on it didn't fall into the mechanism. So I just put 2 more wires coming out of this frame, of the chest cap frame here, and wrapped it around the neck. Again, just to keep that shirt from going down into the mechanism, getting all tied up and messing with the actual flow of the mechanics. So I'll just do this again. Looking good. So next up is actually the arms. I'm going to move this a little bit this way just to give a better view of that. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the hands and the arms I made for this. Now, for almost all of our props that need skeleton hands, we tend to use these Spirit skeleton hands. They're really nice and durable. They're only $8 normally, but we always buy all of our stuff at Spirit on November 1st, the day after, so everything's 50% off. So $4. These are very nice hands. I don't have to make them myself. Okay, the best thing about these hands, besides being nice and sturdy, nice little lifelike skeleton look, is they actually have different hands. They have a left hand and a right hand. Now, a lot of times they cheap out and just use the same hand for both sides, but these are really nice that they have a thumb on each opposite side, which is really nice. The other thing is they fit real nice in 3/4 inch pipe. You can just take the pipe, put it over this bigger section here, stick it up in there, put a screw through it, and you have yourself a real nice hand that you can use to put onto any posy or any type of mannequin that you might be using out of PVC pipe. And that's exactly what we did for these. I'll take this one here. Now again, we put foam on here on the hands, kind of squish that down a little bit just to make it a little more corpsey-like. Also created a few more spots here to make it look like the forearm. Once that all dried, painted it black again first, came back with the red. And again, try to make it like it was decaying. Some parts it's missing the foam, some parts it's not. Just so it gives a really nice decomposing look. Now, again, I have that PVC pipe that the arm is hooked into. And then I just put a coupler on the end. And what it allows me to do, if I take this screw out, put those on the end of my arms here. Okay, and the other one. The screw out of that one. I do put screws in all my couplers just to make sure they don't fall apart when we're taking it out into the trail, and so it doesn't fall off while it's working for the 2 nights of our trail. Slip right on there, put 2 screws on there, perfect. So next part, go ahead and put the shirt on. I should probably point out that all the dimensions, I use my own shoulders and arm length dimensions. The reason for that, I can use all my old clothes and they fit perfectly. Oops. The other arm in here. Again, just took one of my old shirts, distressed it up, put a few holes to actually expose that decomposing body. Also with the arms, so you can see the decayed arms there. Let me go ahead and close up the arm here. Same with this side. Put that hole here so you can see the arm. So there you go. There we go. And that shirt hangs down a little bit. Now I did have to put a hole here right by the neck. And I don't have that piece here, but the rest of that spike that's been put through them, I have a large section, probably 4 feet long, that's also colored black. That looks like the rest of the spike that's coming through his back here. And then that just goes into a PVC coupler end cap. Right on the back here. Again, I have that 4-foot pike here. It's all black. It looks like that spike goes all the way through the zombie to the ground. Okay. Next step, the head. Let me grab that. Okay, can't remember exactly where we got this mask. May have bought it at Spirit or maybe off of Amazon. I actually really like it. It's got a lot of detail, matches the color scheme here that we're using. So all I use is the foam heads, those typical foam heads. Now this was a little bigger than the typical foam heads that we use. Let's see if I can get that off. But basically I just built up foam. It's kind of hard to see. Built up foam on top of that foam head with, again, great stuff. I may have used Loctite, I can't remember which one. But basically built up space so this fit a lot more snug and filled out a little more. Okay. And I should have pointed this out when I had the clothes off, but I actually needed to bring the neck out a little bit just so it was in relationship to the hands. Because of these two bars that are moving back and forth, I had to stay in the center of that, otherwise it would have interrupted that mechanism. So I basically brought it out, bent it up with 240, looks like 245s, just to bring it up and out a little bit. And that then allows me, with this PVC I glued into the base of the foam head, I can just put that right on here. Like so. And I will close this neck up. And I actually use a baby pin here in the front here just to tie it to the collar so it closes up a little better. I'm going to leave that off right now just for ease. Anyway, bring that neck up. And there you have Spike. So I'm going to turn this a little bit towards the camera so you can get a better look at it. There you go. And then I'll get the controller just so you can see. Turn that on. There we go. Again, you can see that movement going out. Okay. Now I mentioned it actually has sound as well. I'm going to plug that in. This happens to be one of our sound controllers. So if I trigger it again, the sound adds a lot to it. It has multiple sounds that it cycles through each time it's triggered. So a little bit of a knock, that's just because I didn't tighten up the linkage in there. That's actually pretty quiet when it runs beyond that sound. So the final piece, just to round out Spike here, as you notice, it's just half a torso here. And again, with the spike coming out here, put that back in just to show you that. Again, you got 4 feet of spike that's coming through here. But the concept was the guts are coming out from when the spike impaled it down here below. But you notice that the back half of spike is missing. It's fallen off. So it was hanging there with the spike. Eventually it just decomposed so much that spike's lower half completely fell off. So let me get you that part. Okay, so all I did for that is take a pair of my pants, filled it up with great stuff here just to round out the waist, put a few entrails out here, painted it red, distressed up the pants a little bit. So this is the bottom half of Spike. Which would go right here. Now we actually lay this on the ground just to show that it's fallen off. So I'm going to put that down here. Move this just a little bit back here. So let me adjust the camera here a little bit and I'll give you the full effect here of Spike. And we'll trigger it for you. Well, that's pretty much a wrap on the look back at how we put Spike here together. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll have plenty more on the way. Until then, stay calm, haunt on. Thanks for watching Life Intrigued Haunt Division.